I would like to welcome Jessica from Not Too Shabby by Jess on the very first Kelly Tries It. Hello there. We're going to get an inside scoop on your absolutely beautiful heart paintings. And I'm so excited to kind of learn a little bit more and get some insider tips and tricks from you.
Before adding any paint or epoxy to this piece, I'm going to cover the sides and back of the panel with frog tape. This will help protect the panel from any resin drips that might occur.
Jessica, how do you prep your heart panels before you start painting? And also, do you take the edges off before you do any of your pouring or painting?
So I personally like the resin to flow over the edges. So I do not tape the sides, but I'll always tape the back. Or I will use the Varathane or Minwax finishing paste, and I'll rub that all along the edges. And that way, when the piece is finally done, you don't need to even use your heat gun or anything. Pop them right off. Right. So this guy I taped, and then this guy I did wax.
Since I did tape the sides, I'm going to add some varnish to the seams to give it a leak-proof protection. Now, Jessica, how do you feel about doing a base coat on your paintings?
If it is a custom piece, I always ask the person, do you want to see the wood grain showing or do you not? It just depends on what I'm using and if they want to see the wood or not. If they say no, I paint it first. 9 times out of 10, I use Artist Loft from Michaels.
Ooh, I love Artist Loft acrylics as well, and I think we can both agree that any project that we do lacing with, we use Moss Epoxy's Tabletop Pro. Now, this has a 30-minute working time and is awesome with creating beautiful cells. While tinting the epoxy, you can see I'm using just a tiny bit of fluid acrylic. This way, the epoxy will still be translucent and I can see other layers through it. This is going to really help in creating amazing depth in your piece. Now, that rule doesn't apply to your white pigment. Jessica had a fantastic tip. She said when you're mixing your white pigment with the epoxy, make sure you cannot see the popsicle stick through the pigmented epoxy. That way you know your ratio is perfect. It's time for the ooey gooey sand. Now I think I made this just a bit too wet, meaning I put a little bit too much epoxy into my dry sand mixture. But once I spread it out, popped all the air bubbles with my torch, I sprinkled some dry sand without any epoxy on top. This gave it a little more texture and just looked a little less muddy. Once I swept away all of the loose sand, I started pouring on my tinted epoxy, starting from the darkest color, working my way all the way to the lightest color. After sufficiently blending together my ocean blues, I used my popsicle stick to drizzle on some white tinted epoxy. I then took my heat gun to blow out that white epoxy over the blues and then torched that white epoxy to activate the cells and to create that lacing pattern.
Now, what is your secret for doing that first large wave that you do on all of your pieces? It's just like the knockout part of your piece that I love. Like when I tried it, so after I did my first layer, I tried to push it out and my edges got kind of like fuzzy. Like my cell borders weren't really defined. They just kind of like fizzled out.
What I do is for my very, very, very first layer, I do a thick layer of white. So I'll put a lot of white pigment down and then I always just blow it out to the depth that I want. And then I bring the cells out with a torch. So it could have just been that you didn't have enough white. So you were just trying to force out as much as you could, but didn't have enough to go out that far, if that makes sense.
After adding one last little baby wave, I let this layer cure for about 24 hours before using a medium grit sponge sander to add some tooth to the surface of the epoxy. This way the next layer will have something to adhere to. Okay, Jessica, while we're continuing to add more layers to this piece, I wanted to ask you a question. Now, I absolutely love your Tip Tuesdays that you do every single week on Instagram. Do you have a tip for anyone watching who wants to dip their toe in the epoxy world and who is inspired by your work?
be patient. It is not going to happen overnight. I cannot tell you how many hearts I threw away because I could not get consistent cells, and I probably went through a gallon of resin before I figured out, oh, this is how you're supposed to do it.
I completely agree. I mean, every single new thing that you're going to try, there's going to be trial and error. But as soon as you get into that groove, you'll feel it and be like, all right, yes, I got this. Speaking of trying new things, if you see a technique that you want me to try or a creator that you want me to collaborate with, make sure to tag Moss Epoxies and use the hashtag #KellyTriesIt.
When you're done painting, how do you finish off your pieces?
There's a few different ways that I do it. And I just so happen to have a piece here that I'm finishing off. So this is what it looks like as like I do the piece. So the sand has all dripped down, and then I go back in with black paint and I will paint all the way down. And then this whole thing will be black.
When I was doing my piece, I didn't know how to do the edges. With mine, I taped it off and just had like a clean line. But now after seeing how you let your sand drip and then paint just like that negative space with the matching color, I'm just like, okay, well, I wish I asked you before.
Well, like we just discussed, I didn't paint the edges of my piece, so that means I need to bring out the Moss Epoxies Tabletop Pro to add one more layer all over the piece and make sure to get all of the edges. Now, I don't know about you, but I like to spread my epoxy with a gloved hand. I like to kind of massage the epoxy into the surface, and then I pop all the bubbles with a torch. We did it! Now we are on to the last step, which is removing the tape from the back of the piece and making sure to sand it all smooth. And there you have it. We are completely done with this beautiful heart ocean resin painting inspired by the super crazy talented Jessica from Not Too Shabby by Jess. For more information on this project, including a full supply list and a written tutorial, make sure to check out mossepoxies.com, where we have a wide range of project ideas and technical help blog posts. I can't wait to see you next time on another Kelly Tries It. Thank you for watching.